Red Creek, Montana, was the kind of town people dreamed about living in. Wide open fields, a single main street lined with mom-and-pop stores, and the comforting hum of slow, peaceful life. From the outside, it looked perfect, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and doors stayed unlocked at night. Kids rode their bikes freely, neighbors waved to each other, and weekend barbecues were a staple in every backyard. But beneath this calm, ordinary surface, a tension lingered that nobody could quite name. Something about the town felt off. For years, the locals whispered about the Miller house at the edge of town. It was large, a little run-down, and sat slightly apart from the other homes, surrounded by towering pines that blocked the sun in the late afternoon. Rumors swirled about strange happenings there, flickering lights when the house was supposed to be empty, muffled noises late at night, and shadows that moved across the windows when no one was inside. People started avoiding that corner of town after sunset, a quiet unease growing in every whispered conversation at the grocery store or diner. The mystery of the missing girl, Emily Harper, only added to the unease. Though she vanished back in 2008, her absence was felt every day. Schoolmates whispered about the last time they saw her. Neighbors remembered the day her parents called the police, and even new residents quickly caught onto the invisible tension in Red Creek. Though the case officially went cold, the feeling that someone knew more than they were saying hung in the air, like a storm cloud that never fully moved on. Locals began noticing small details that seemed insignificant at first. A swing in Emily's backyard that never moved, the Miller dog barking relentlessly at the woods behind the house, or strange footprints in the snow that led to nowhere. Children were warned to stay away from the Miller property, while adults who had lived there for decades hesitated to knock on their door, unsure what they might find. Fear became quiet, almost polite, but it was everywhere, seeping into conversations and lingering in the corners of Red Creek like smoke. Even newcomers felt it. Travelers passing through the town often commented on the odd silence in certain streets, the lingering coldness in some homes, and the way people would suddenly stop talking when someone mentioned Emily Harper. There was a collective understanding, unspoken but deeply felt. Red Creek had a secret, and it wasn't just about a missing girl. The town itself seemed alive with suspense, as if every creaking floorboard, every rustling tree, and every glance exchanged in the diner carried a hidden warning. Something dark was buried in the heart of the town, waiting to be uncovered. Emily Harper was just 16 when she vanished in the fall of 2008. Her room was left untouched, her backpack still on the floor, and the small lamp by her bedside casting a dim glow over her unfinished homework. The night she disappeared, the town was quiet, the usual hum of crickets and distant car engines, but something in the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Her parents reported her missing immediately, but by morning, a feeling of dread had spread through Red Creek, like a shadow that no one could shake. Police launched a full investigation, combing through every corner of Red Creek, but leads were scarce. Friends were questioned multiple times, neighbors recounted what they remembered seeing that night, and even strangers passing through were asked if they had noticed anything unusual. Yet every clue seemed to vanish as quickly as it appeared. The case began to frustrate law enforcement, and whispers started spreading among the townsfolk. Was Emily gone for good, or was someone hiding the truth right under their noses? Months turned into years, and the investigation grew cold. Red Creek tried to return to normal life, but the shadow of Emily's disappearance lingered. Every Halloween, people remembered the night she vanished. Every birthday, they wondered where she might be. Her empty bedroom became a haunting symbol of the town's collective unease. And while life went on the surface, everyone carried a subtle fear, a quiet paranoia that someone close had been keeping secrets, that the truth was hidden behind friendly smiles and polite nods. Speculation ran wild. Some said she had run away, others whispered about a stranger passing through town, and a few brave souls suspected someone inside her own family. The Millers, who lived on the edge of town, were always just out of reach of suspicion, quiet and reserved, blending perfectly into the town's fabric. But odd behaviors, small inconsistencies in their stories, and unexplained comings and goings kept a seed of doubt alive. It was the kind of doubt that grows quietly but takes root deep, leaving a town restless and watching. Emily's disappearance wasn't just a case file in a police station. It became a ghost haunting Red Creek itself. Every unclaimed item in the lost and found, every shadow at dusk, every strange sound at night reminded the townsfolk that Emily was missing. People began noticing things they hadn't before. The way the Miller house seemed darker at night, the slight tremble in a neighbor's voice when her name came up, and the sense that someone, somewhere, knew more than they were saying. The town had been forever changed, and the chill of uncertainty settled over Red Creek like a winter frost that refused to melt. 15 years had passed since Emily Harper vanished, and Red Creek had mostly learned to live with the mystery, at least on the surface. People went about their daily lives, but Emily's name still stirred unease whenever it was mentioned. Then, out of nowhere, the case took an unexpected turn. It started with what seemed like a routine traffic stop on a quiet Montana highway. Officers pulled over a car for expired registration, nothing out of the ordinary. But what they found inside changed everything. The vehicle contained items that seemed odd and out of place, carefully wrapped old clothing, faded photographs, and boxes labeled with cryptic initials. At first, police weren't sure what to make of it. But as they examined the contents, they noticed patterns. Some of the items had been preserved in a meticulous way, almost like someone wanted them to be found, or feared what would happen if they weren't. The discovery was unsettling, the kind that makes your stomach drop, and it immediately sent investigators scrambling to trace the vehicle and its owner. Within days, the trail led to the Millers, the quiet family at the edge of town, the ones who had always kept to themselves. People were shocked. The Millers had been pillars of normalcy in Red Creek. They attended church on Sundays, helped neighbors with chores, and had children who played with the rest of the town. But the evidence left no room for doubt. The items in that car were directly linked to Emily's disappearance, and the authorities realized they were looking at someone who had hidden a dark secret in plain sight for over a decade. Detectives dug deeper, reviewing old case files, revisiting witnesses, and piecing together details that had never made sense before. What once seemed like minor inconsistencies in Miller family statements now took on a terrifying clarity. Late-night trips into the woods, sudden disappearances of neighbors' pets, and unexplained changes in family behavior suddenly painted a picture of careful planning and secrecy. Red Creek was about to confront a truth it had long avoided, and the tension in town began to rise like a storm on the horizon. The revelation spread quietly at first, through police channels and discreet calls between investigators, but the impact was immediate. Everyone in Red Creek knew the Millers, and the idea that such ordinary-looking people could be tied to Emily's disappearance was unthinkable. Families who had once waved at them on Sunday mornings now avoided eye contact, neighbors whispered at grocery store aisles, and a new fear settled over the town. The fear that someone they trusted might be capable of something horrifying. The break in the case had come out of nowhere, but it promised to unravel everything Red Creek thought it knew about its quiet, peaceful life. Once the Millers were identified as key suspects, the investigation turned into a full-blown operation. Detectives didn't want to alert the family, knowing that any hint could lead to destroyed evidence. Teams combed through every detail of the Millers' lives, financial records, phone logs, emails, and travel histories. At first, the evidence seemed circumstantial, but the deeper investigators dug, the more the pieces began to fit together. Something dark and calculated had been happening behind the walls of the Miller house for years, hidden in plain sight. Officers returned to old crime scene reports and re-interviewed neighbors who had initially said nothing unusual had happened. But memory is a tricky thing. With new context, many admitted to noticing strange behaviors. One neighbor recalled the Millers' unusual obsession with security cameras and locks, while another remembered odd trips in the middle of the night, short, unexplained excursions into the surrounding woods. Even the smallest details, once dismissed, now seemed critical. The investigators realized they were dealing with someone who had meticulously constructed a life designed to hide a horrifying secret. Then came the shocking discovery beneath the Miller property: hidden tunnels, built decades ago, possibly long before Emily's disappearance. These passageways were narrow, dark, and lined with shelves containing preserved items, clothing, personal belongings, and even journals that hinted at manipulation and control. Detectives described the feeling as entering a world frozen in time, a place where every object had a purpose, every corner concealed a story. The tunnels weren't just storage. They were a grim, deliberate extension of the Millers' secretive world. The investigators carefully documented every inch of the property, photographing, cataloging, and analyzing. What they found left them unsettled. Diaries, letters, and photographs indicated that Emily's fear and isolation had been ongoing for years. There were hints of intimidation, manipulation, and psychological control, as if the Millers had been systematically keeping her under their watchful eye. The layers of secrecy were staggering, and the town's understanding of the family's outwardly normal life was about to be shattered completely. As word of these discoveries leaked among the authorities, the case took on a new urgency. Detectives knew they were uncovering something that went far beyond a simple disappearance. Red Creek had trusted the Millers for years, never suspecting that behind their polite smiles lay a carefully constructed prison. Every new revelation seemed to pull the town deeper into a darkness it had sensed but never confronted, and the feeling that the past was about to collide with the present weighed heavily over every step of the investigation. Once news of the Millers' connection to Emily Harper's disappearance began to surface, Red Creek was thrown into chaos. The tight-knit community, which prided itself on knowing everyone and trusting each other, felt betrayed in ways that were hard to put into words. People walked past the Miller house with a mix of fear and disbelief, neighbors whispering behind closed doors about the horrifying reality that had been hiding in plain sight for over 15 years. Rumors spread faster than the investigators could manage, each one darker and more terrifying than the last. Local residents, who had once waved politely at the Millers during Sunday services or grocery runs, suddenly felt a cold distance creep into every interaction. Questions that had gone unasked for years now demanded answers. How could a family like this exist among them unnoticed? How had no one suspected the horrors lurking behind those walls? The ordinary routines of the town, morning coffee at the diner, school drop-offs, weekend errands, were overshadowed by unease, as every glance exchanged between neighbors carried suspicion and fear. Even longtime friends of the Millers were left questioning everything they thought they knew. Casual stories of family barbecues, shared holidays, and friendly gestures now seemed tainted with uncertainty. How much had been genuine? How much had been calculated to hide the truth? Conversations that once centered on everyday life turned into whispered debates about signs they might have missed, odd behaviors they had brushed off, and secrets that could have been hidden right under their noses. The town's sense of safety, once solid and comforting, was suddenly fragile and fractured. Children in Red Creek began to notice the tension as well. Friends whispered about Emily Harper's disappearance in hushed tones, and the fear that something terrible could happen again lingered like a shadow. Even playgrounds and schoolyards, once filled with laughter, were now tinged with unease. Parents became hypervigilant, watching every interaction and every corner of the town with cautious eyes. The idea that someone from within their own community could be responsible for such a crime changed the very fabric of Red Creek, leaving residents wary and unsettled. Every street, every home, every familiar face now carried a hint of uncertainty. The town was no longer the quiet, peaceful place it had once been. It had become a town holding its breath, waiting for the next revelation to shatter what little trust remained. Neighbors looked at one another with suspicion. Friends second-guessed long-forgotten conversations, and the sense of unity that had once defined Red Creek was slowly unraveling. The Millers, once just another family on the edge of town, had become the epicenter of a fear that gripped the entire community, leaving everyone on edge and questioning the safety of the world they thought they knew. The day the Millers were finally arrested, Red Creek seemed frozen in disbelief. Neighbors peered from behind curtains as police vehicles lined the streets, lights flashing, engines idling, and officers moving with precision and caution. The quiet family that everyone had trusted, waved to, and invited to community events was now the center of a criminal investigation that rocked the entire town. People whispered to each other in stunned tones, unable to reconcile the polite smiles they had once seen with the horrifying crimes being uncovered. When the officers led the parents and one adult sibling from their home in handcuffs, the sight was surreal. The children who had grown up playing near the Miller house looked on from a distance, their innocence clashing with the dark reality unfolding before them. Friends and acquaintances struggled to process the scene. How could a family that seemed so ordinary, so normal, be capable of harboring such terror? Every step the Millers took toward the police cars felt like a slow, unmasking of a nightmare that had been hidden for years. Investigators began revealing the chilling details that had come to light. Emily Harper had been kept in isolation, carefully monitored, and psychologically manipulated to ensure she could not escape. The hidden tunnels beneath the Miller property had been her prison, a place where every movement was controlled, every word measured, and every attempt to reach out for help suppressed. Items recovered from the tunnels, diaries, photographs, and personal belongings, painted a picture of fear, manipulation, and relentless control. It was a calculated, horrifying scenario that had left the entire town stunned. The community struggled to grasp the audacity of it all. Parents who had once greeted the Millers at church now found themselves recoiling, questioning every interaction they had shared. Neighbors who had once waved during simple grocery store encounters now wondered if the Millers' calm demeanor had been a mask, carefully crafted to hide their sinister intentions. The sense of betrayal ran deep, as Red Creek realized that someone who had been part of the community's daily life could orchestrate something so terrifying without anyone suspecting a thing. As the arrests continued and investigators meticulously documented every corner of the Miller home, the town's collective shock grew. Rumors spread like wildfire. Speculation, fear, and disbelief intertwined in conversations that once centered on ordinary life. Red Creek was no longer a peaceful town. It was a community grappling with the realization that its sense of security had been shattered. Every familiar street, every neighbor, and every memory associated with the Millers was now overshadowed by the horror of what had been revealed, leaving the town teetering on the edge of disbelief and fear. Once the Millers were in custody, investigators began piecing together the full extent of the horror they had kept hidden for so long. What emerged was far more disturbing than anyone in Red Creek could have imagined. Emily Harper's diary, discovered in the hidden tunnels beneath the house, detailed her constant fear, her desperate attempts to escape, and the psychological torment she endured. Each entry revealed manipulation, threats, and coercion. A chilling glimpse into the life of a girl trapped in plain sight, watched and controlled by the very people the town trusted. The documents, letters, and photographs recovered from the Millers' home painted a systematic picture of deceit. The family had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase their tracks, falsifying records, bribing locals for silence, and even misleading law enforcement over the years. It became clear that this was not a momentary lapse in morality but a carefully constructed life of secrets. Every visit, every friendly smile, every ordinary appearance was a layer of disguise that hid the calculated cruelty within. Red Creek had been living alongside this nightmare without realizing it. Psychologists brought in to examine the case described the Millers' behavior as chillingly methodical. Emily's isolation, the strict control over her environment, and the deliberate manipulation of those around her created an invisible prison that had lasted for years. Experts noted that the Millers had weaponized normalcy, making themselves appear harmless while orchestrating a life of terror behind closed doors. The scale of deception, combined with the psychological damage inflicted, left the community reeling. How could such evil exist in plain sight, right under their noses, for more than a decade? The town's residents were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about trust, appearances, and the human capacity for deception. Parents worried about their children, neighbors scrutinized every interaction, and old friendships were tainted by suspicion. The Millers' carefully hidden world had now spilled into every corner of Red Creek, leaving scars on a community that had once felt safe and familiar. People began to question what else they might have missed, realizing that even the smallest signs of odd behavior could have masked unimaginable cruelty. Even as authorities continued to uncover evidence, new layers of horror seemed to emerge. Items hidden in secret compartments, cryptic notes, and photographs suggested that Emily's suffering was only part of a larger pattern. The town, gripped by fear and disbelief, slowly began to understand that the story they thought they knew, of a simple disappearance in 2008, was just the tip of a terrifying iceberg. Red Creek's quiet streets, once symbols of peace, were now reminders of the darkness that had quietly existed for years, and the sense of security the town once held was forever shattered. As the court proceedings continue, Emily Harper's story serves as a haunting reminder that darkness can hide behind even the most ordinary faces. The Millers, once neighbors, friends, and pillars of a quiet Montana town, are now symbols of a secret no one could have imagined. Red Creek may never fully recover from the shock, but the truth has finally come to light, and justice, though long delayed, is finally underway. And yet, as the townspeople look around their streets, they can't help but wonder, how many other secrets lie hidden behind closed doors? How many other smiles hide horrors waiting to be uncovered? In Red Creek, the quiet town that thought it knew peace, the line between normal and nightmare will never be the same again. Because some secrets refuse to stay buried.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.